Hello there and welcome to another Robot Wars tier list video. This time we're on Extreme 1. Extreme 1 was very different to the regular series of Robot Wars in the sense that unlike other seasons of Robot Wars, this one was all just about the side events, in the sense that these were all just competitions like All-Stars or Tag Team Challenge Belt, Annihilators, etc, etc. Between the two extremes, I actually prefer this one over Extreme 2. One of the reasons why is because the randomized format for me was far better than the attempt at trying to, formalize the format. So, what I mean by that is in Extreme 1, every episode would be different. Every episode except for the Annihilators and the Second World Championship would be different. You'd have like a tag team, and then you'd have an all-star battle, then you had a challenge belt battle, then you have, a vengeance battle. It would always be changing the battles and the competition each time, and it would always have something interesting involved. There was very few episodes of Extreme 1 which weren't as good. Ironically enough, one of the worst ones is the one where they had nothing but all-star episodes and one melee. In my opinion, of course, I know some people quite like that episode. I don't. I always preferred it that way because if you think about it, in the sense that if there was one competition you didn't like, well, guess what? The next competition will be something far, far better. Whereas with Extreme 2, and I think this is probably why it had a lot of lower views, if there was a competition you just didn't like, you'd just skip it, and as a result, the episode would suffer and plummet in the viewership. But I digress. We're not going to be talking about that right now. We're going to be talking about the robots, and there's going to be a whole batch of robots, from international robot wars to the small ant weights to the heavyweights, etc, etc. All these robots were in several different competitions, and I am just going to rank them based on how I personally prefer them. So first up is 101. 101 has really not changed at all over the years. I've always enjoyed 101. I think its simplified design is very, very, very effective. And I think it's such a gorgeous looking robot, all things considered, even though it's a very simplified design. It's simple, but brilliant. It's got these little yellow wedges now, which allows it to basically dig under and push robots more effectively. However, it is starting to show its age a bit. 101 is not as effective as it used to be. It lost to Mega Morgan Dietor in the tag team because it just couldn't push its opponents effectively, whereas before it was able to push opponents and just, bulldoze them around the area. Now it's starting to struggle. Now it's starting to have a bit of issues here and there. Its track is starting to lock up a bit. And we're going to see these issues certainly play out in Series 5, which will be its final appearance. But for now, it's done okay-ish. So I'm going to still put it pretty high up. I'm going to put it in the B tier if this website will actually work. Yes, it will. Thank you. This is such a poorly optimized website, by the way. They disable any ad blocks, so you can actually just block the ads, which result in the whole web page being extremely slow. Really shitty website, all things considered. It's useful for these tier lists, but shitty nonetheless. Next up is Free Stegs to Heaven. Now, Free Stegs to Heaven is, to a lot of people, the worst the Stegosaurus machines, and I can certainly see why. After the, really brilliant Rambot that got to the grand final in Series 3 Stegosaurus, and the decent flipper of Steg 2, this one just feels almost random. Like they wanted to, improve upon Steg 2's rather unreliable drive, which meant they basically went back and forth and didn't reflip robots effectively. But then they went with something that is just as unreliable, if not worse, doesn't really have a good damage output, and its design is not the best. Extreme 1, I should say, version of Stegosaurus is far worse than the one that we see in Series 5. The one in Series 5, I think, looks so much better. The way it has, more guarded wheels and the circular disc. Whereas this one just has like a lawnmower blade, exposed wheels, and it just looks like it's been really scrappily put together. And this is an all-star machine. And here it is, just, it looks embarrassing, honestly. I'm going to put it in D tier. It's not a good robot, but it's not dreadful to the sense that it is the absolute worst. By the way, I forgot to mention, in case you are new to these, the way this tier list works is you have S tier, which is the best of the best. They are pretty much there's nothing wrong with them at all. They're just really, really good. A tier, which is they're really, really good, but there may be like one or two flaws. B tier is they're sort of average, but they're also pretty good nonetheless. The average tier, which is the great design but ineffective. So it's a really good looking robot, but it's really poor. It's not very effective at all. And on contrast, you have effective and poor design. Those are robots which are really effective, but their design is just awful. Like, you could have like something that's a grey box, but it's super good, but it looks dreadful. D tier, that's not a great robot that you're gonna remember you really want in the arena. You don't want to witness this thing. And then you have F tier, which is the worst of the worst, the ones which are just garbage. And you have Jokebots, which are robots which are there for a laugh. That's about it. Agrobot is next. Agrobot is the first of the A's. I love the triangular design of Agrobot. I think this is a massive improvement over the previous versions of Agrobot. I think Agrobot, has always been one of those robots which is not necessarily an all-star robot, but a very recognizable robot. It's really a shame that we never saw it in Series 5. I actually love the triangular design Agrobot. I think that's a massive improvement. Unfortunately, it is not reliable in the slightest, which might be the reason why it didn't qualify for Series 5, because it kind of immobilized itself on its own weapon, which is this weird little, like a whole body lifter thing, where it has like a little thing that sticks into the ground and lifts the whole body so it can topple over. Then it's got a claw on the back. So despite its really gorgeous and brilliant design, it is ineffective, and I'm going to put it right there because unfortunately, it is a very good robot, design-wise, but it is unreliable as hell. It's no wonder it didn't do very well. Next up is AJ. AJ is one of the most forgettable robots in RoboWars history. I'm sure most people probably don't even remember this thing. It appeared in a wildcard, which was a nice way of showing off robots that didn't qualify, or at least were attempting to qualify for Series 5, to give them a chance to appear on TV. Now, AJ obviously must have impressed the producers because it was allowed in. Unfortunately, AJ is one of the most forgettable robots ever because its battle was just god-awful. It was against Stinger, and I don't even remember anything that happened there. I think Stinger almost got dumped out of the arena at the end by Sekilot because the battle was that boring. AJ was meant to have a ring spinner, but it didn't work. It doesn't even look that effective. It's a very god-awful design. AJ's name as well is just kind of weird, all things considered. It doesn't really make all that much sense, unless there is like a behind-the-scenes reason, and I've just completely forgotten about that. I'm going to put this in F tier. Like, this robot just is not good at all. I get the intention behind it, but it's not very good. Okay, so next up is Alien Destructor. Now, unlike the Alien Destructor we see in the Dutch series, which is actually a pretty good robot, this Alien Destructor was pinned up against Chaos 2, and it, got dominated. Alien Destructor, I think the design of it is really good. I think it's a very gorgeous looking robot. I think in terms of how effective it was pretty decent. So it's not, an ineffective robot at all, but it just didn't impress all that much. It's kind of it was kind of doomed because of its opponent, which is of course Chaos 2, and so it didn't really have a good chance to shine, unfortunately. But nonetheless, I still think this is a very good robot. I think this deserves a B tier at the very least, because design-wise it's great. Effectiveness-wise, it's actually pretty effective if you actually saw it getting going, if you've seen the Dutch Walls. If not, then, yeah. Next up is Ansgar. Now, Ansgar, I must admit, I have a bit of a soft spot for Ansgar. I quite like the design. I think its paint scheme is very unique to RoboWars. I don't think there's ever been a robot that's been painted like bronze with blue sort of army decal. Its design is also very unique as well. It's got this, it almost looks like a bottle cap that has been like pressed or like bent and deformed in some ways, or a condom that's not been used. But it's got a lifter thing. I don't know why you describe that. It's also got a lance. All things considered, I think Ansgar is a very gorgeous looking robot. I think it's a very unique looking robot. It's a case of, is it really that effective though? It sort of is. I mean, it was the best of the German robots, technically speaking. And to be fair, it could get around the arena. It could at least try to do something. It was very slow though. Its weapons weren't very, useful. It's a hard one to rank because all things considered, it shouldn't really be high up, but at the same time, it's not garbage. It's not dreadful. I'm gonna put it in B tier, but I'm gonna put it like below Alien Destructor because I think all things considered, it's a good robot. It's just, it's the best of like a bad batch, if that makes sense. Okay, and the first Ant-Weight. Now, I have a massive bias when it comes to the Ant-Weights. I absolutely love the Ant-Weights. I think they're wonderful. I actually went to see the Ant-Weight World Series one time, although I was only there for like 2 hours, so I wasn't there for the whole thing, but I digress. I love the Ant-Weights. I think it's fantastic. I think the Ant-Weights are fun. I think they're wonderful little things. The battles in both Extreme 1 and in Extreme 2, I've always loved. Extreme 2 is a little bit weaker than Extreme 1's version, all things considered. But I still think it's fun. And Anto is first. Now, Anto is interesting because Anto is a smaller version of Tanto, which was a robot that never qualified for Robot Wars. Even in the reboot, it never qualified. It appeared in the pilot, in fact. Anto here is very interesting because unlike say, other smaller versions of robots, or robots that appeared in the Ant-Weight World Series, Anto here only ever appeared in this form, I should say, in Robot Wars. In the sense that it only had a flipper in Robot Wars, but it never had a flipper if you ever saw it in the Ant-Weight World Series or any other competition outside of Robot Wars. It always had like spikes at the front. These, it almost looked like how do I describe it? Cherub, except it didn't have lifting forks. It just had stationary spikes. So why did it have a flipper in this? Like, why did it never have a flipper in the World Series, but it had a flipper here? It's one of those unanswered questions which I'm always been fascinated by. Nonetheless, I think Anto is a very good-looking robot. I think it's a very good-looking design. However, if you watch the Ant-Weight competition, you'll notice that Anto really did not do very well. It was basically immobilized from the start. It was not really that effective. It tried flipping at one point, which was kind of funny. It lost its wheel straight away. It did very poorly. Like, it's a shame because I think design-wise it's very effective, but in effect, it had the intention. It's just a shame it never worked out. I wonder if that's why they didn't have the flipper in the actual World Series and only had it in Robot Wars. Next up is Anti-B. Now, if you ever wanted a Behemoth toy, this is probably how a Behemoth toy would have looked like. I think it is wonderful. I think it's a brilliant design. Anti-B had a bit of stroke of bad luck in the Extreme 1 Ant-Weight competition. It basically drove under the flipper. So the flipper went up and it drove and accidentally got itself pitted behind the flipper, which is a very unique way of immobilizing oneself. I think the design is fantastic. It's a miniature Behemoth. I think it's great. I think effectiveness-wise, it was pretty effective. It actually did a lot more successful here in Robot Wars than it did in the Ant-Weight World Series, because in the Ant-Weight World Series, it didn't do very well. But it did very well here, and I think it's a very gorgeous design. I'm actually going to put this in, A tier. Actually, you know what? I'm going to put it in S tier, because it really is just a brilliant design. It's what you'd imagine an actual toy Behemoth to look like. It is that great. Okay, so next up is Anvil. Now, Anvil is one of those effective robots, but it's got a poor design. I do not like the look of Anvil. Anvil is such a boring looking robot. It was my least favorite when it came to any of the armed forces battles, and yet it was the one that won both the armed forces special and the melee. It's just such a boring looking robot. It doesn't look very interesting. It doesn't, have anything going for it. It's just a Rambot with little spikes in the front, and it was slow. It wasn't like it was a speedy Rambot that just slammed robots into the arena like Storm 2 did, for example, or Tornado. No, this one just slowly pushed them and they broke because the other robots were just really bad. Anvil was effective though. I gotta give it credit, but it was a very dull robot, very dull design. Next up is Arnold Terminator, Arnold A Terminator as it's called in Extreme 1. Returning from Series 4, it's one of those robots which I'm shocked never reappeared in Series 5 because it was, a really good robot. It was brilliant in the Annihilator. I think design-wise it's mostly good. The reason why I say mostly good is because it's basically the same as the previous one, which was a really good-looking robot, really effective robot. However, Arnold A Terminator decided to give itself a long overhead axe, and in my opinion, that completely ruins the design. And I feel like this axe was a bit of a detriment half the time, because you see it trying to like attack robots, and it would like almost topple itself over because the axe was so long and top heavy. It was so awkwardly designed. It managed to, face up against Pussycat quite well, but at the same time, how much more effective would it have been if it didn't have the axe and it just was the flipper and it was able to just, bulldoze Pussycat about, as opposed to hooking over it and hoping that Pussycat would just go away, because that didn't help, because Pussycat just kept shredding it. If it was with just the flipper, I wonder if it would have been better. I do wonder. Which is a real shame, because I think Arnold is a very good robot. It's just that axe that ruins it. But I'm still going to put it in A tier. I think it's a fantastic robot. Arnold A, Terminator gets A. But the axe is what brings it down, in my opinion. The axe really wasn't needed. Next up is Atomic. Now, Atomic only appeared once. It was meant to have appeared in the Annihilator, but it was one of two robots that got thrashed by Hypno-Disc in Series 5. And for those who don't know, Extreme 1 and Series 5 were filmed basically alongside each other. So a lot of things that happened in Extreme 1 also affected Series 5. It also affected the Dutch Wars. It also affected the US series as well, the Extreme Warriors. Atomic is one such robot. Unfortunately, it got completely destroyed in Series 5 by Hypno-Disc. And so it didn't appear in the Annihilator. And I wonder how well it would have done. I do genuinely wonder how well it would have done. Anyways, Atomic, gorgeous robot. This is a massive improvement over Series 4. Series 4's version, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't great. It wasn't great. It was kind of unreliable. Its flipper blade broke off quite a few times. Its design was good though, and its design had a purpose. And this is what perfecting from the previous design looks like. It's more compact, it's more powerful, it's more vicious. Atomic is just a gorgeous robot. It's certainly one of the most gorgeous looking robots in Robots history, in my opinion. And it did really, really well. It dominated in its melee fight. It's such a great melee, the Atomic versus Mousetrap fight and Torque fight. It's such a great melee. It really shows the power that Atomic had, and it's a shame that Atomic never really got itself, into the Annihilator because of what happened in Series 5. Nonetheless, Atomic I actually think deserves an S tier because it was just so good. Axor is next, the successor to Iron Ore, although they would go back to using Iron Ore after this. Axor, I really love the barrel body. I think it's such a great design. I love the look of it, the red with the big face on the front. Axor, Axe and Flipper were pretty good, all things considered. Axor was one of those robots that's kind of got screwed over because of who it faced. Similar to Alien Destructor, in the sense that in both cases, Axor and Alien Destructor got screwed over by facing really powerful robots. In Extreme 1, Axor got to face Panic Attack, and it lasted at least a minute before it got taken out very quickly, and it's one of the most gorgeous battles, that one. He particularly put Panic Attack's like control and how it just scoops in, slams Axor on top of itself, uses the forks to sort of hold it in place, drive it to the pit and pit it. It is one of the most beautiful moments of driving in Robo Wars. It's certainly in the classic era. It is just a brilliant battle. Axor in Extreme 1 obviously didn't do very well. In Series 5, it faced Granny's Revenge, which was basically a free pass. And then it faced Wheelie Big Cheese in probably one of the most infamous out of the arena flips ever, because it was the highest flip ever. So poor Axor. All things considered, though, Axor is still a really, really good robot. There's almost no flaws with Axor. I think it's just a case of it got screwed over with other competitors, which is a real shame. I remember when I was a kid, I used to think Axel was like one of my favorite robots ever. I'm actually going to put Axel like in A tier, like high A tier, just because, obviously it's not perfect. It's barrel bodied, and the flipper and the axe kind of work against each other in a weird way, but it is almost a good, perfect robot. It's reliable. It was pretty powerful with that axe. Had a good flipper. It just got screwed over by who it faced. Oh boy. Next up is Beefcake, and Beefcake looks almost like a miniature Panic Attack without any actual moving forks. I do wonder if that was intentional. The Beefcake fight against RC Warriors, one of the funniest fights. In fact, it is single-handedly the funniest battle in Road Wars history. It is hilarious as hell. And you see these two featherweights just zipping about and, being all, small and speedy. And then, Sakilot and Shunt, the two of the most powerful house robots, the most deadly house robots. And they just destroy these featherweights. Sakilot runs over Beefcake at the end, which is hilarious. Beefcake's design, it's kind of cool. It's like a miniature, Panic Attack, as I already said. It's not got anything to write home about, all things considered. It was quite effective. It was speedy, it was fast, it was, this zippy fucking thing. It was hilarious to watch. And the battle is one of the funniest fights ever. You can't go wrong with it. I'm going to put it in B tier just because it is, it is sort of a basic sort of design, but it was effective. It was good. It was, it's got the look similar to Panic Attack, which is all, which is a benefit in my opinion. Anyways, Behemoth is next. Behemoth, I'd argue is a little bit more reliable than the Series 4 version. The Series 4 version was very unreliable. Like, it would break down, it would, struggle to stay alive for the full match. This one's a lot more reliable. It was able to stay alive for the full match. It was able to, withstand attacks and assaults from, Tornado and Hypno-Disc in particular. It won against Hypno-Disc. It didn't win against Tornado, nor did it win against Razor, but it still survived long enough. Whereas, if it was the Series 4 version, it would be dead. I love the addition of the axe. I think the axe works with Behemoth, in my opinion. I love the way, especially in the Stinger fight, when it lifts Stinger up and it hooks on with the axe. I think it's such a great idea. Behemoth's design is certainly improved. I think its reliability is certainly improved. I think it looks really good. This is definitely one of the better Behemoths that we see, which is really strange when you consider what's going to happen next, because after this, Behemoth just goes nosediving in quality, and then it comes back up again when the reboot comes around. But, this is the last good Behemoth in the classic era, unfortunately. So it's going to go into S tier because it is just a really good robot. Going to go above Anti-B, even though technically speaking I prefer Anti-B just because it's that way. Up next is Bigger Brother. Now, Bigger Brother is interesting to discuss because if this was the Series 5 ranking, Bigger Brother would be very high up. But this is Extreme 1. And for some reason in Extreme 1, Bigger Brother just sucked. Bigger Brother was an unreliable mess in Extreme 1. It broke down midway through the Flipper Frenzy, just out the blue. There was no real reason for it. Its Flipper was just, I don't know. Its Flipper was very powerful. Give it credit where credit due. Its Flipper was very, very powerful. But I don't know. What the hell happened to Bigger Brother? Its design is really good. Its redesign is fantastic. It's got the effort put in. The engineering certainly much better than the crappy little flipper it had in Series 4. But again, this is just what the hell happened with reliability? In the tag team, it didn't do very well. It kind of broke down. It would always have its flippers stationed upwards when it broke down, which is kind of funny to think about. I'm going to put Bigger Brother in the great design but ineffective category, just because, despite the fact that Bigger Brother is a very good robot, it is not the powerhouse that it will become. in Series 5 onwards. This is Extreme 1, so of course it's not got the power at the moment, which is interesting considering they were filmed side by side. So I do wonder what the hell happened like between matches that caused it to just be shit. Actually, you know what? I'm going to move it up to B tier because I think it's better than that. I'm going to put you above 101 because, I think it's more effective than that. But, I'm thinking of the Come and Get Eric's Vengeance fight, all of a sudden, which is a very good fight. Anyways, up next is Bulldog Breed. Bulldog Breed was another robot which only had a really one-off appearance, which is a shame because I think it's a gorgeous design. I think its flipper was far more improved from the previous version. However, once again, Hypno-Disc in Series 5 screwed it over, which resulted in it not appearing again. It should have been in the Annihilator. It never appeared. And so it's a shame, really, because Bulldog Breed looks fantastic. Its flipper was far better. I think it's, it's funny because whilst the other Bulldog Breeds later on are far more effective, far more powerful, I actually quite like the design of this one more. So I think the bumpy front looks great. I think the, big bulldog with the lifting the weights on the front looks fantastic. The, British flag in the background is a gorgeous robot. Gorgeous robot. And it did very well. And I think this is a very good robot. But again, the back end, unreliable. Its flipper isn't as powerful as it could be just yet. Keyword there's just yet. And so, it's almost there. It's one of those robots that it's almost to the S tier. Next up is Cataclysmic Variabot, CV for short. It's a purple brick in the arena. It is such a boring looking robot and it didn't do very well at all. This is the same problem I had with AJ in the sense that it's just not a very good looking robot. It's not a very interesting robot. It doesn't do anything that's going to captivate your eyes. It's not going to do anything to, make you feel entertained when you're watching this thing fight because it doesn't really do an awful lot. Cataclysmic Variabot, it could have been better. I like the purpleness, but yeah, it's kind of crap. I'm actually going to put it above AJ, but it's still in the F tier. Next up is Cerberus. Now, Cerberus last series just wasn't very good. It lost its head, quite literally. Series 3, Cerberus was gorgeous robot. It was very effective. It was, decent. Well, I say very effective. It was decently effective. Got to the heat final. Cerberus by this point is just, it's there. It's kind of a forgettable robot, all things considered. Appeared in the tag team. Its self-righting arms don't really look that effective at all. In fact, I don't think they ever worked. Its design doesn't really help it do anything. It can't really push effectively. It can't really use that spike effectively. It can't really do anything effectively. And, it doesn't have the gorgeous look of the Series 3 version, which was that gold look and the shininess, which is beautiful to look at. This one just is, it's a very forgettable robot, very much a downgrade, very much outdated. No wonder it never qualified. So up next is Chaos 2. And this is one of my favorite official images of Chaos 2, the one where it's just from like above at the front. I don't know why. I think the light gleaming across the front looks so gorgeous. I think it's such a gorgeous robot, Chaos 2. All things considered, it's quite basic compared to like robots with flippers nowadays, which are more like compact, more, structured, whereas Chaos 2 does sort of look like a robot that with a flipper just placed on the front, and it's got all this high ground clearance, etc. But for its time, and even now, Chaos 2 is a legend, and despite the simplified design, it is gorgeous. I love it. I love the shiny black. I love the Perspex back end. The logo as well is just kind of iconic, all things considered. It's still a powerful robot. It did really well in the All-Stars, coming in the top 4. So it actually got off much better than Firestorm, all things considered. But unfortunately, its age is starting to show, especially when it fights. When it fights Tornado twice. Tornado, being just this brutal robot nowadays. Or at least at that time, Chaos 2, kind of struggled against Tornado twice. And, its reliability is starting to be questionable. It loses CO2 quite a few times. It lost CO2 in one of the tornado fights. It lost CO2 in the fight, the Flipper Frenzy, and couldn't really self-right off the side. But nonetheless, I think it's still a great robot. I think it's still an S-tier robot. I think it's really good. It's there's a reason why it's the champion. 2 times champion, in fact. Just an all-round fantastic robot. Up next is Combat Ant. Combat Ant is, a play on the word combatant. And so Combat Ant, he's certainly the best of the Antweights, in terms of effectiveness. His bludgeoner, which usually bludgeoners are completely crap and useless, but Combat Ant managed to make its work. So much so it managed to throw a robot out the arena. Combat Ant's destructive. I've always been fascinated by its design. It's got this sort of like paper thin design, which is really weird. And yeah, it's got all this circuitry and all this, motors and everything to make it work. And yet it's thin as fuck. It's like, how do they do this? It's an engineering marvel, really. I love the little, creepy ant face on the front. I don't know why. It is a little bit simple in design, but it's also just a really unique and cool design. It's destructive as hell. Honestly, this deserves an S tier. I think it's going to go right up with Chaos 2 at the top there, because it is just brilliant. Next up is Vercingetorix. Vercingetorix is the successor of Vercingetorix. Basically, it's the Series 4 version of Vercingetorix, except it's now got wheels instead of tracks. I've always loved the design of Vercingetorix. I think Vercingetorix is a very good robot. It appeared a lot in Extreme 1, and it's surprising that it never appeared in Series 5, especially given its pedigree and its history. I'm shocked that it didn't, whereas robots like Juggernaut appeared. Like, what the hell? But I digress. Like, it is a gorgeous robot. I think the blue sky sort of look on the robot is beautiful. I think the weaponry as well, both the lifter and the axe, were pretty good as well. It was a robot that often got pitted against really powerful robots like Big Brother. But I digress. I think this is a really good robot. I think this is a really effective robot, all things considered, when it could be up against robots. The only problem is it's somewhat unreliable. So for those who don't know, it kind of broke down quite easily. It's a real shame, but nonetheless, I think Vercingetorix deserves a big old. I think it deserves an 80. I think it's definitely up there. Just gonna rank it there. I think it's a really good robot, all things considered. It was always unlucky. It's one of those unlucky robots. Next up is Dietor. Dietor now appears with the very famous bucket design. This is the design that everyone knows, the design that appeared in the Extreme Destruction video game. It's the one that pretty much anyone who makes fake toys or creations of robots, or even like try to recreate in an antweight or featherweight form. This is the design they always go with. It's the bucket scoop design. Everyone knows this design. It's probably the most famous design. I always preferred the Series 3 and 4 version of Dietor's design. I actually prefer that much more, personally speaking. And technically speaking, the Series 3 version was the best and most successful of the Dietor machines, but I can see why the bucket scoop design is very cool. I think the fact that he went with a wider wedge worked in its favor. Series 4 was not a good year for Dietor. It was a bad year. I love the rounder design. I think that's great. The more circular design. I love the fact that, the bucket actually has like variations. You could have the 2 triangles on the top, the big long bar on the top, or the just on its own. I think no matter what, you always had great fun with Dietor. Dietor had appeared a lot in Extreme 1, especially the tag team, where it shows off how actually pretty good Dietor is when it's in combat. It's why I don't ever rank it in the joke bot category, because Dietor can really do a number on other robots. It was able to defeat Steel Avenger once again, after all these years, despite the fact both robots have gone through improvements, still just overpower it. It was, able to, fend off against 101 and King Bee, because, let's be honest, Mega Morg didn't really do anything in that fight. It was capable of fending off against Commangetorix. All these robots, which it should have not been, as effective against. It lasted the full match in the First World Championship, only losing because Razor, obviously was more damaging and dominant in that fight, but it took out Flensburger Power. It outlasted the Revolutionists. Dietor really is effective when it can be. It's a shame it lost in the first round of the All-Stars. It was flipped over by Wheelie Big Cheese, which was a very good fight. One of my favorites from the All-Star competition of Series 1. I used to have that on the VHS tape that I had of Royals, of all the fights I recorded from TV, and I thought, I love that fight so much. It's one of those fights that stick into my mind half the time, especially the commentary and the chase with Deadmill. So yeah, Dietor really is a good robot. It is a good robot. Obviously, it's there for fun at the same time, so you've got to keep that in the back of your mind. It's not there to be completely serious. But all things considered, I think Dietor deserves a high ranking. I think it deserves a good ranking. It's not going to go in S tier necessarily, but it is going to go in A tier because it is just very, very good. Like, very good, in fact. Design, even effectiveness and improvements overall, far better. Next up is Disc-O-Inferno. Now, Disc-O-Inferno, interestingly enough, is the Series 4 version of Disc-O-Inferno. For those who don't know, Extreme 1 had a lot of variations of Series 5 and 4 versions of the robots. And this is the Series 4 version of Disc-O-Inferno, and this is its only appearance in this time period in 2001. And it certainly showed how effective this robot could be. In Series 4, it was a travesty. It was absolutely awful. In both of its fights, it's in the Celebrity Special and in the Heat, it lost straight away. It was unreliable. It was a mess. In Extreme 1, this thing is just a brute. It shreds through opponents. It is, a powerful disc. It's got a brilliant design. I love the little sort of LED lights that flash on the side, the red LED lights. It sort of almost matches the name Disc-O-Inferno. I've said it before, I'm a sucker for see-through Perspex armor. I think I love it so much. And Disc-O-Inferno highlights that in some of the best capacities. A massive improvement over the dreadful Series 4 version. And it is essentially the Series 4 version. It's just, for some reason, more reliable. So that's going to go into S tier. I'm actually going to put it right there. There you go. All right, so next up is Dominator. Dominator 2, to be precise. Dominator 2 is interesting because it's still the Series 4 version, except they improved the armor slightly. It's got, it doesn't have the tape around the sides. It's stuck in place a lot more. Dominator in Extreme 1 suffered from a similar issue that the Dominator from Bigger Brother suffered from in this series, in the sense that it is a good robot, but in this particular case, it didn't do very well. It lost straight away in the All-Stars, although it didn't do it as humiliatingly as Bigger Brother was in several of its fights. It wasn't very effective at tackling Wild Thing. To make matters worse, in the other fight that it was in, the wild card, it didn't really do anything because Executioner killed itself straight away, and so we didn't really see much of Dominator in Extreme 1. I think the design is still good. I do like the flame decal. I love the gold design. it's still a good robot. It's just a case of I just don't know how to. It's one of those robots which is like Bigger Brother. It's better in Series 5, sort of, and yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna put it right by the Bigger Brother one, just because similar situation. Doom is next, and I wonder if it was actually based on the Doom games, because it's got a flame decal on the front. It's got the Doom text, although it's not like the Doom games text. But nonetheless, Doom. It almost looks like a plastic, shopping cart that has been put on top of an RC toy. It doesn't look very good. It doesn't. It looks crap. I don't know what else to say. It just doesn't look very good. It doesn't look entirely effective. It wasn't effective. In fact, it's kind of a boring looking robot. A very boring looking robot. I'm going to put it in F tier. I'm going to put it right at the top, though, because at least it's got flames on it. Draven is next. Draven, or should I call it Anthrax? Because, okay, so here's a fun fact about Draven. Draven was actually called Anthrax when it was first shown on TV. And unfortunately, by the time they aired Extreme 1, 9/11 happened. And when 9/11 happened, you then had the Anthrax stuff happening in the mails. And so Anthrax in Robot Wars had to be renamed, had to be completely renamed into Draven, which is the name they stuck to ever since. This is its first era debut. This is sort of the Series 4/Series 5 version of Draven. I love the Perspex armor, again, sucker for it. I love the design as well. I think the design is gorgeous. In terms of effectiveness, we didn't really see much of it because it kind of got defeated very easily by King Bee. It was still a good fight, all things considered, and Draven, wasn't too bad. It's a case of we didn't see much of it, so we can't really judge it completely. I still think it's a very good looking robot. I think it's got a very gorgeous design. It's got a very interesting history, and technically speaking, that's a bit of lost Robot Wars media, as the original version that aired with Anthrax as its name, before they had to redo the whole thing with Jonathan Pierce replacing the name with Draven as opposed to Anthrax. It makes you wonder if they will ever be rediscovered, because it is a very fascinating story. I'm going to put it into B tier, and I'm going to put it just above Beefcake, because I think it is a very good robot, and at this time it's not outdated like it is in the reboot. It's got a gorgeous design. Yeah. Up next is Drillzilla. Now, I remember when I said about silver boxes in the arena, which, if they don't look very good, but are very effective. Well, Drillzilla is a silver box in the arena. However, it looks good. It's got the claws at the front, which are stationary spikes, technically. The drill on the back, and the the sort of exposed legs, the shufflebot bit on Drillzilla. Drillzilla, a very powerful and very deadly robot. One of probably one of the best US robots out there. Caused a lot of controversy in the pits because there was a lot of very bitter teams who seemed to be really upset that Drillzilla was a very good robot. They were like, it's just a boring grey box. How could it be so good? If you read some of the blogs online, there's one team in particular, and it's one team which I've rated very negatively, who really did not like the fact that Drillzilla was a very good robot and their robot was crap. it is like copium at its best. Drillzilla, a very good robot, all things considered. Very good, sleek design. It's one of those designs which, it's simple, but it's effective. And I like that. Simple, but effective. And I'm going to put this right into the S tier, but I'm going to put it below Atomic because Atomic looks more better. Up next is Fighting Torque. Now, this is the first of the double robots. What I mean by that is in Extreme 1, you'll see several robots that came in with two different designs. So once again, I have to reiterate, this was filmed just after Series 4, during and before and during Series 5, which meant that several robots went through 2 different designs in the show. You'll see quite a few of them. Fighting Talk is the first one. Fighting Talk was the robot which I believe they tried using in Series 4 as well as Series 5 before they went with a redesign, which was the Hippopotamus robot, which they kept the name Fighting Talk in the IO, but it was basically just Hippopotamus. And I class it as Hippopotamus as opposed to Fighting Talk. So, Fighting Talk. This thing is clearly a joke bot. This is not to be taken seriously whatsoever. It is a sort of pyramid-shaped robot, which has this really top-heavy, like, spinner, like, axe thing. I don't know how to describe it. It has a kilt of, like, a Scottish, like, skull on the top. If it's flipped over, especially in the match with Atomic, it has an ass. Like, it has an ass that is exposed for all to see. It is there to make fun. It is there to have fun, to make fun, and it did so effectively. It is one of the funniest. It is a fantastic fight. All things considered, it is a funny fight as well. And Fighting Talk really made it work. Fighting Talk, it's there to make fun. It's a joke bot. It is a joke bot. Nothing more, nothing less. Firestorm is next. Firestorm has reverted back to its Series 3 color scheme, where it's yellow and red, I should say, as opposed to orange and yellow, or technically it's red and yellow, but it looked more orange on screen. I prefer that look. Firestorm is a really effective robot. Much better than the Series 4 version. It's able to slip under robots effectively, throw them over, very speedy, very, powerful machine. Unless it faces Razor, then it just gets obliterated. This was a very good robot. Very good robot. Firestorm, gorgeous robot as well. I don't know what else to say. It's just a very effective, very gorgeous, very good-looking robot. It is the pioneer, or not necessarily the pioneer, but it is the definitive front-hinged flipper, and for very good reason. It's gorgeous. It is effective. It is fantastic. Flipping fantastic, so to speak. Its fights were fun as well, especially the Razor fight, although that's more because Razor's in it and what Razor did to it. But I digress. I think Firestorm is great. I'm going to put it into the S tier, and I'm going to put it below Disc-O-Inferno, just because Disc-O-Inferno was just far more impressive. Next up is Flensburg Power, depending on how you want to pronounce it. Flensburg Power is this big green thing with a drum blade on the back. It appeared it appeared 3 times, I think, in Extreme 1. It appeared in the German Melee, it appeared in the International Mayhem, and it also appeared in the Second World Championship. In all 3 of its appearances, it broke down and did nothing and died. It got flipped over by Dietor in the Second World Championship, so I guess it did something there. I don't hate the design, honestly. I don't really dislike it. I don't really care for it either. It's unreliable, it's a mess, but I wouldn't say it's F tier. I actually do kind of have a soft spot for it. Just a tiny soft spot for it. Maybe I'm a little bit biased, but who cares? I'm putting it in D tier. Fluffy is next. Fluffy appeared only once. It appeared in a Mayhem, which was a Annihilator qualifier. Fluffy didn't do much in Extreme 1. It died more or less straight away. It didn't hammer its opponents. It was, so Fluffy, I can't really rank very highly because it didn't do very well. Obviously, we do know in hindsight Fluffy is quite a good robot, or at least a decent robot, but this is something that we gotta wait until Series 5 for. So until then, I'm just gonna put it in the great design but ineffective category, because obviously it's the Persifix arm and the big nasty spinning blade. I think that's great. But aside from that, Gemini is next. Gemini appeared twice again. It appeared in the All-Stars against Razor, which is such a gorgeous and fantastic fight. I love the scene where, Razor just pops as it's crushing down near the wheel. I love that so much. And the ending where you see the flame just roar out of Razor's behind afterwards, which is just wonderful visuals alone. Gemini, again, gorgeous robot. It's the Team Mace machine. It is great to look at. It is a unique robot. I think it's wonderful. Unfortunately, it made one massive design error, and that is the wheelie bars at the back. So in Series 4, it always wheel backwards a bit, which, gave it a little bit of a sort of top-heavy awkwardness when it drove towards the robot, so it would go backwards slightly. But at least it was somewhat effective at just taking out opponents and having fun. With the wheelie bars at the back in this one, it meant that a lot of the time they'd get stuck on their back. And you see this in Mayhem, and you see it later on in Series 5, it gets stuck and it can't move. Real shame, because I think Gemini is a gorgeous robot. I love it so much. I'm going to put it in A tier, because it is still a good robot. It's just that one design flaw just neutered it massively. Yeah, let's put you there. I love Gemini. Next up is Genesis. Genesis is literally a grey robot with no weapons, and it is shit. F tier. Just bottom of F tier. This thing might be the single worst looking robot I've ever seen. At least the worst robot we've seen so far. Golem is next. Golem is, once again, we've seen him in the German video that I did. Golem, I love the design of Golem. I think it looks great. It is not effective in the slightest. It is an unreliable robot that broke down very easily. But its design is so great. It looks like it could be so good. It looks like it would have been a fantastic round ball if it worked. If it worked. It sucks that it doesn't work. I love the hourglass design as well. Again, Golem, really good looking robot. It was not effective. All right, next up is Hard Cheese, and this is the final appearance of Hard Cheese. It's not the final appearance of the team, though, because they will appear in Series 5 with Viper 1. I'm just having a little drink now. My throat's getting really sore. This is a shame, because I got loads to go through. And so Hard Cheese, I love the fact that it's just a big block of cheese with a toy wrap on top of it. I think that's great. I think design-wise it's great. Effectiveness, though, I don't even remember what it did. It sort of just got bashed by Typhoon once and died. That was it. So, design-wise, good. Effectiveness-wise, oh no, it's not. Hippopotamus is next. Hippopotamus, I love the design. I love the fact that it looks like one of those hungry hippos that you used to play with on the, the toy games that, kids used to play. I used to play it myself. I love that. It looks like a hungry hippo. I love the design. I think the design is absolutely fantastic. I think it being destroyed in both this and in Series 5 is wonderful. Sadistically so. I think this is a joke robot. This is a joke bot. This is not there to be serious. This is not there to win any competition. It's there to have fun. And that I appreciate. I love it. Because it's silly. Hypno-Disc is next. Hypno-Disc is, by this point, not as powerful as it was in Series 4. Series 4 was its peak. Now it's starting its steady decline. Extreme 1 isn't too bad. I mean, look at what it did to Willy Big Cheese and Ming Free, but then you see it in the Annihilator and you see it in the All-Stars. You realise, okay, Hypno-Disc has got a little bit of reliability issues. Design is still great, but it's not as good as the Series 4 version. The Series 4 version just looked beautiful. The spikes, the way the disc was sort of domed shaped almost. This one seems like a clash between the Series 3 version and the Series 4 version. But the Series 4 version was so much better, design-wise and effectiveness-wise. It was just this just feels like a massive, dip in quality, honestly. It's a real shame, because it is a gorgeous robot, but it is a decline. It is a decline. It's going in A tier. Speaking of really gorgeous robots, I really love the look of Judge Dredd. I think Judge Dredd is one of those really underrated robot designs. I love the roundness. I love the flipper at the front. I think it looks great. Once again, shame it never appeared in Series 5. It does appear later on in Series 6 and 7, though, which is fantastic enough. And this is... I like the design. I think the design is great. I love the self-righting mechanism it has. That big, like, weird, like, tail whip thing. I love the flipper at the front. I love the roundness. You know, I love the color scheme as well. It looks good. Effectiveness-wise, it was flipped over and it couldn't self-right effectively. It tried to do stuff, but it kind of broke down, which is a shame because I think Judge Dredd is a very good-looking robot. Very good-looking robot. I'm going to put it right at the top of the great design but ineffective category. Up next is Killertron. This is its final appearance. Killertron has always been one of my favorite robots in Robot Wars. I love the design. I love the pink. I love the yellow spikes. I think this is almost like its peak design, you know, and this in the Series 4 version. You know, the scoop at the front, the, you know, shade, the scrappiness of the design as well, the over-the-top spikes. This is pretty much its peak design here. Same with the Series 4 version, almost. This robot also has a lot of controversy behind it because a lot of people, and even myself to an aspect, believe it should have won its battle. It should have won against Splinter and Agrabot because it was unfairly attacked by Sikalot, and as a result, it lost the melee and didn't appear in the Annihilator, which sucks dick. Especially because I think Killertron would have been fun to have. It would have like diversified the robots a bit from having a bunch of silver grey robots, and it would have had this big pink thing in the middle. I think that would have been wonderful. But I mean, it's still a fantastic Annihilator nonetheless. But yeah, Killertron, design-wise, is great. Effectiveness, it wasn't too bad. I will give it that. It wasn't too bad. It still had a little punch to it. It's just a shame it got unfairly attacked by Sikalot. That is one of those things that really annoy me because untapped potential. Untapped potential. So let's put you right there, honestly. B tier, that's the last time we're ever going to see Killertron, which is a real shame because I love Killertron. Next up is King Bee Powerworks. First, the Powerworks machines. The fourth King Bee robot. You know, I love the Perspex armor. I love the addition of the use of the Perspex armor. They used it beforehand, but this time they've got the blue like binder around the sides and the orange, which makes it just... I think that's such a good color combination, the orange and the blue, as well as the see-through plus Perspex. Design-wise, it's great. Effectiveness-wise, it's a bit of a 50-50. You know, we saw in Series 4 that its reliability was a bit iffy in the sense that it lost to Atomic. You know, a robot which it should not have lost against, all things considered. But it lost to Atomic, very surprisingly. It then appeared in Extreme 1 and it didn't seem that effective. It was very unreliable in a lot of its fights. It was like spinning around on the spot. It was, you know, losing a wheel. It was, you know, it was not very effective in terms of reliability. I mean, it was effective to an extent, but I don't think it won a single fight in Extreme 1, actually, come to think about it. I know it won against Draven, but, you know, yeah, think about it as a difficulty slider, you know. You win against Draven, which is super easy, but then you lose against Dietor, you know. It's a shame because I think I'm going to put it in the great design but ineffective category just because, you know, it was really unreliable, and this is the point where it's starting to dip in quality a bit, which is a real shame. Up next is Legion. This is the second ever Clusterbot, and it's an outweight. Legion also appeared in the Outweight World series. I believe they lost, or did they win a fight then lost? I don't remember. It was like Outweight World Series 4, I think it was, they appeared in. I really don't like the armorless design, the fact that it's all its bits are exposed. That's kind of a massive flaw, especially against a spinner like Combat Ant. I think is a very unique design, don't get me wrong. It's a very unique design. Effectiveness-wise, it wasn't brilliant. I mean, I have a soft spot for the outweights, but Legion, I'm afraid I'm going to have to put you into D tier. I'm going to put you in the high D tier, though, because all things considered, it wasn't dreadful. It just wasn't effective. Up next is Big Nipper, or Little Nipper, actually, not Big Nipper. Big Nipper's the heavyweight, the really great heavyweight, which we're going to see soon, because Series 5 is after this, maybe, unless I do the reboot. Little Nipper has no relation to Big Nipper. It's its own robot. It actually appeared all the way back in 2000 in the Outweight World Series 2. It was made out of cardboard then, and it was red. It's still got the mousetrap weapons, which is kind of funny to think about. I love the little eyes on it. I think it's got a lot of character to it. It was the second best outweight in the competition because it was the second survivor. It lost, obviously, to Combat Ant in the end, which is a real shame. But then again, Combat Ant was just way above in its league. This thing was a little bit too slow, but its design was great. Its design was fantastic. I think, effectiveness-wise, it was reliable. It was slow, though. It was reliable but slow. Its design is great. Reliability, not so much, but not dreadful. I'm going to put you into the A tier because you were a very good robot. You were a very good robot. You were just very, very slow, that's all. And my stomach is growling because I am hungry, but I cannot eat because I have to do this fucking video. Next up is Major Tom. Major Tom is, it's got the go-kart design, the bumper cart design, which is the design it's going to keep for the rest of its series until Series 7, where it has this weird design that only appears for like 5 seconds before it gets destroyed. The bumper car design, probably its most famous look. I think in Extreme 1 it was a bit more elongated, and I'm not too sure it had the roller bar top to allow it to self-right, but I don't remember, unfortunately, because I don't believe it lasted all that long. It was in the tag team and then it got defeated. Design-wise, I mean, it's a unique design. It's definitely an improvement over the previous version. Oh, pardon me. And it's got the, head and the gumball head. I love that gumball head. It makes me laugh. It's got that little disc on the front, which doesn't really do anything. I don't know where to put it, honestly. Like, I wouldn't really put it in B tier, and I wouldn't really... I don't know. I'm going to put it in the great design, but ineffective. It's one of those robots which it's hard to judge, really. Very hard to judge. Mammoth, on the other hand, is very easy to judge. Straight into the F tier. Jesus Christ, what the hell is this thing? It looks like the Series 3 Mammoth that has just had the top bit gutted and replaced with that like triangular wedge at the top. And when you think of a mammoth, you think of the big woolly mammoth, which is an elephant with hair, essentially, with long tusks. You don't think of that, a grey whatever it is, strutting along with all sorts of bits sticking all over the place, some handprints just plastered all over the place, multicolored handprints, I should add. What the hell is that thing? Just what the hell is it? It was ineffective, it was useless, it's ugly as hell. Just, no, moving on. Manta is next. Manta, the US Manta. Again, design-wise, very beautiful. It was very effective, except when it faced Panic Attack. Panic Attack kind of schooled it a bit, but I think Manta is great. I've already said all in the other video, which Manta appeared in, the Extreme Warriors one. Manta, gorgeous robot. Not much to say. Very effective, gorgeous, sleek, beautiful robot. Very beautiful robot. You're going to go right. I'm going to put you there. Above Hypno-Disc, in fact. Mastiff is next. Mastiff is one of, I think, 2 Italian robots. Let's just say the other Italian robot is far better. Mastiff is this triangular robot with this big dog on the front, and it's got exposed wheels, spikes on the sides, and a big flipper. It can't self-right. It's very weirdly designed. It's not F tier. I'll say this: it's not F tier, but it's certainly not going above. It's gonna go. I'm gonna be nice and give it D tier, but it's only going the D tier because of the design point. I quite like the look of the Mastiff design for the cartoony Mastiff. That's about it. Maximil is next, and Maximil, I believe I've already done the Dutch Series 1 video, but in Dutch Series 1 I said how I didn't really like the Maximil design. It looks like it's just, but at the same time I do quite like it because it's got an effective design. This design never appeared in Dutch Series 1. Instead, it was replaced with the round, really kind of disappointing design. However, if you've ever seen something that's been rediscovered, a bit of lost media that has been found, which was Robot Wars, Robot Wars, the Kickoff. It was for Dutch Series 1. And they actually have qualifier images of the Dutch robots qualifying. And Maximil was one of them. And it smashed through bricks, and that spinner was deadly. Like, what the hell happened between then and now? Why did it get neutered somehow? Why? It's a beautiful robot. I love the design of Maximil. Maximil in Extreme 1 is better looking than the one that appeared in Dutch Series 1. I love the orange. I love the windmill look. In fact, if you would twist it over, it almost does look like a windmill. I love it so much. And yet it had this paper thin spinner which didn't do anything, despite the fact that in this qualifier footage that is freely available for anyone to see, it smashed through bricks. It took chunks out of the bricks as it smashed through them. What the hell happened between now and then? Jeez. I like Maximil. I do. Effectiveness-wise, 0. It's going to go right at the top of the great design board because it is good, but yeah. Next up is Megahertz, not to be confused with the other Megahertz, the one that is a big computer. Megahertz worked. It was effective. It's got a very boring design, though. It's one of the Armed Forces designs. It lost to Anvil twice, in fact. But it was an effective robot, just very boring. Next up is Megamorg. Megamorg is, much bigger and beefier. I actually think the scoop at the front is much more improved from the previous version, which was just weird looking and forky. Megamorg, it's bigger, more brutal, more durable. It's able to survive Shunt's axe through it. It was able to survive Ming crushing it. It was able to survive, all sorts of damage and just keep going. Unfortunately, it didn't do very well because it sort of won the tag team with Dietor, but it withdrew after the first battle they had. And, it lost the Vengeance battles and all that. I do love the fact that it's got Anne Robinson on the front, depicted as a devil. For those that don't know the context, she said some comments about the Welsh and this being a Welsh team. They didn't take it very well. but it's just a little comedic little thing on the front. I really do like Megamorg. Megamorg is pretty good in Extreme 1. Megamorg isn't a bad robot, all things considered. It is slow. It's not going to win many fights, but it isn't ineffective, so to speak. So I'm going to put it in the B tier, but it's going to be just like... so it's going to be above Ansgar. Yeah, it's going to be above Ansgar, but that's about it. Ming 3 is next. I'm sure a lot of people have already spoken about the Ming machines before, how they had something going with this Series 4 version with the flipper, and then they decided to ruin it completely by trying to be a Razor ripoff. And I agree. I'm sorry. I think this is a dreadful upgrade, so to speak. They could have just kept the Series 4 version, the one with the flipper. They could have just kept using the flipper. Instead, they thought, you know what? We're smarter than that. We're going to just take a look at Razor and just try and replicate Razor, but do it poorly with exposed wheels. It's literally the Series 4 version, by the way, with just a claw stuck on top, and they've removed the wheel barriers, meaning the wheels are exposed, which of course Hypno-Disc perfectly tore off. And I don't know, like, if this were the Series 4 version, would it have done better? You know, I do wonder if they just made the Series 4 version a little bit more beefier, a bit more, more reliable, instead of giving it the claw. I wonder if it would have been better. Because this is just a massive dip in quality. It wasn't dreadful though. I mean, I'll give it credit. It wasn't, dreadful. It wasn't ineffective. It could still do things, but very minimal amount of work. I'm going to put it in the effective but poor design category for now, because it was effective. It was able to crush down on Mega Mold, for example. But my God, what a downgrade. What a massive downgrade. Why? Why? Just why? Mousetrap is next. Mousetrap, I love the guillotine blade they've added to this. Unfortunately, Mousetrap was up against Atomic in its only appearance in Extreme 1. And in that one appearance, it got flipped over immediately and we didn't see much of it, which is a real shame because I think Mousetrap is a fantastic robot. I think the design is great. I think the guillotine blade is great. Now, this is something that should be noted. Series 5, it did much better. I mean, it didn't get to the semi-finals, but it did much better. So, I'm going to rank it in the great design but ineffective category, but only because of how brief its appearance was. Up next is Napalm. Napalm appeared twice. As you can probably see, there's 2 Napalms down below. So Napalm is at first used the Series 3 version, just painted black, but it also used the one that would appear in Series 5, which is the more, dare I say smaller looking one, the more streamlined looking one, one that looks less scrappy. Napalm in Series 3, obviously, it's just been painted black, given like red bits on the front. It's basically just the Series 3 version of painted black, and I actually preferred the more like scrappy brown and red and orange look for Napalm, because Napalm obviously is a reference to napalm, the real life napalm, and that would make so much more sense because it's fiery as opposed to black. The black just, I don't know, I'm not really a fan of the black coloring, but it's not bad. It's I'm going to put it in D tier. It's going to be like a high D tier because it is. It by this point, it was there to just. It wasn't there for much purpose. The other Napalm, I get. Obviously this has been designed with the black in mind, which makes a little bit more sense. It looks almost like a coffin. It's got the big promotion to whatever school they were in. Here's a fun fact though. There was going to be a Napalm, or at least a Napalm that could have appeared in Series 6. And that Napalm would have been red, which would have been interesting to see. I think it was going to be red. I'm trying to remember the picture. I don't remember. I think it was red. It was basically this version, but red. And this is Napalm 2, technically. I do quite like the design of Napalm 2. I think it looks more streamlined, much less scrappy. It's meant to be more, competitive, so to speak. That doesn't change the fact that it was unreliable. Very unreliable, in fact, because in the Annihilate, it actually had to be pushed into the arena because it didn't fucking work. And it won its melee because Gemini killed itself. So, yeah. So, great design, ineffective. Gonna put you right down here. Yeah, that seems better. Up next is Nasty Warrior. Nasty Warrior is a German robot made out of wood, and it beat Hypno-Disc. It's got a little lawnmower blade at the bottom as well. You might be able to see it, maybe. I quite like the coffin design of Nasty Boy. I think the design has actually been thought out, which is quite nice. Name, Jesus, that name is awful. But maybe if there's some German people out there who could probably say that Nasty Warrior means something really amazing, but I don't know. It managed to do surprisingly well. It was one of the better German robots, despite the fact that it clearly shouldn't have been. To give credit due, I think Nasty Warrior deserves a B tier. It wasn't the best compared to Ansgar, but I think it's still up there, surprisingly. If this will work. Yes, it is good. Next up is Neat Machine. Neat Machine is the Dutch series robot which appeared in the Second World Championship. It's basically the same one as the Dutch Series 1 version. There's no differences whatsoever. I've pretty much have the same thoughts about it. I think it's an okay-ish robot. Nothing major, nothing to write home about. I think the little pickaxe thing at the front looks weird. I don't understand the logic behind that. And I think later versions are just far better, honestly. This is just it's like a stepping stone. But I wouldn't say it's completely ineffective. I wouldn't say it's completely poorly designed either. It's just kind of average, like painfully average. D tier. Oblak, I believe, is next. I always get this confused with the other one. But the other one's called Shockwave, so it's even got it in the actual name tag. Silly me. Oblak. And this is in alphabetical order, so, it will be Oblak. Oblak is basically like Mortis and Commangetrix, and says it has an axe and a lifter. It's not as good looking as either Mortis or Commangetrix. It's very not good looking, in fact. It looks like it's made out of scraps. It's got a big L plate. I love that. That's kind of funny. It was kind of a cool robot, all things considered. At least it had a weapon. At least it had something going with it. Doesn't change the fact that it's kind of a meh robot. But Oblak, you're not too bad. You're not too dreadful. I like you, but you're just kind of at the bottom, in the D tier. Gonna put you there. Panic Attack is next. Panic Attack. Oh my god, what a gorgeous robot Panic Attack is. Is it as good as the Series 4 version? I mean, basically it's as effective. The Series 4 version, I think, is the best looking of the Panic Attack machines, although the Series 7 version does come close. This is just a good looking robot. I mean, it's a very effective robot, even after all these years. There's almost nothing wrong with it. It can't self-right, though. It still can't self-right. Firestorm proved that by pinning it up against the sidewall. Which is a real shame, because Panic Attack is a great robot. It also couldn't handle the pressure that much when it came to the Annihilator, which sucks, because Panic Attack is such a beloved robot. Anyways, Panic Attack, I'm going to put you into S tier, because you are just wonderful. Such a wonderful machine. Next up is Pants. Pants, by the same team that did Pandemonium and more Pandemonium, who was initially believed to be the robot that caused the accident in Series 3, but actually it wasn't. Pants, in the Outrage World series, was a pretty good robot, all things considered, and it's basically the same appearance that it did in the Outrage World series, with the it's basically like an enlarged version of the Hot Pants, which would appear later on. Pants has like a little sharp, like a little razor blade for an axe. In terms of the actual fight itself, it didn't do very well. It does better in the next series, however, but nonetheless, it was not very good here. Shame, because I think Pants is a very good robot. I think it's a very gorgeous robot. I think, it's one of those robots where if you know things outside of robots, outside the television, that it's very good. You can see why this is a good robot, why it's got such high pedigree. I'm going to put it in A tier, though. I'm still going to put it in A tier. I'm going to put it right at the bottom of A tier, though. Panzer Mark II. Great robot. I love Panzer Mark II. its scoop is great. I think the design of it is fantastic. It's got this very militarized look to it. Very effective robot, very beautiful robot. The only disadvantage is the fact that Panzer Mark II didn't do very well in the Second World Championship. As soon as it got flipped over, it couldn't self-right. It's weird how this robot could never self-right despite having a big flipper. Like, you'd think it'd have something on the back, like, even if it's like a pneumatic spike, like Vlad the Impaler had, where it could just shoot itself back onto its wheels without, any qualms. But no, they never bothered with that. I mean, I think this is a much better one than the fourth version, which I don't like personally. But this is still a very good robot. I think this actually deserves an S tier because it's very good. It didn't do very well in the actual Extreme 1 series, but I do think it's a very good robot. And I like it. It's neat if this stupid thing will actually load. I told you already, ladies and gents, how poorly optimized this fight is, and my stomach is growling like mad. I do apologize if you can hear that on your headphones or anything like that. Yes, it's very hungry. Next up is another Panzer. Panzer RAF. We saw Panzer in Series 3. I love tracked robots, so I'm a little bit of a sucker when it comes to tracked robots. The little saw blade at the front. I love the little design. I love the sort of look of this robot. It just wasn't very effective. It was very easy defeated by Exterminator's axe, which slapped him down and just killed it, basically. So it's going to go in the great design but ineffective category. Jeez, I'm very, very, very hungry, which is... Maybe I should take a break. Philippa's next. Philippa, the weird fish-looking robot. It's silver, it's got the flipper, it's got that lifter. It's very effective despite its odd design. One of the best Dutch robots, technically speaking. I think this was actually the one that defeated Panzer. Panzer Mark, come to think about it. A very good-looking robot. Very, very good-looking robot. I think this is a very effective robot. That said, in Dutch, in Extreme 1, it was defeated twice. It was defeated in the Second World Championship and the International Mayhem with Chaos 2. Still, it doesn't take away from the fact that I think it's a very good robot. It's a bit of an ugly duckling, but it's a good robot. All right, so next up is Plunderbird. Plunderbird has returned, this time with the black design, which it used in Series 2. So, it's gone back to black, back in black. It's a much more fatter and wider machine. It's still got the claw. The Series 4 version was just perfection, which is why this one just is kind of a step down in quality, although it is speedier. It is much more speedier. I think overall Plunderbird is a good robot. I think Plunderbird is a decent robot. I think Plunderbird did well, despite the fact that it is technically a joke bot by this point. It is not really taking that seriously at all. So it's a bit hard. Do I put it in joke bots or do I put it in B tier? I'm going to put it into the B tier just because it is, it's the same logic I apply with Diatle. It is a joke bot, but it's a joke bot with a lot of pedigree. Up next is Pussycat. Pussycat is my all-time favorite robot. I'm very biased towards it. It uses the 2-tooth blade in Extreme 1 quite a lot, and then it reverted back to its 4-blade tooth because it's so much better. I love the blue design. I noticed that it got damaged at one point because it had bandaging. It is getting bullied about by other robots if they know how to effectively scoop it up. But it doesn't change the fact that it's great. I love the eraser tag it has after it defeated Razor twice. I think that's great. Pussycat is my all-time favorite robot, so I'm very biased. I'm going to put it right at the top of S tier. It is just perfection. Absolute perfection. Speaking of perfection, Razor is next. Razor's reliability problems, I've always been skeptical whenever people say that, because it only had reliability issues in Series 2 and arguably 3. After that, Series 4, it got properly taken out by Pussycat. And that was it. In the First World Championship, it was, blasting past all the other competitors. It's, the reliability issues have always been, it's one of those things that people would say, oh, but Razor's unreliable. It was only unreliable in Series 2 and 3. Series 3, it got stuck on the arena floor, technically speaking. When it lifted its claw up, that was its only real flaw. In Series 2, it broke down properly, but Series 4, no, it was taken out. It was taken out via like another robot killing it. And Series Extreme 1, the reliability problems, so to speak, are completely gone. Razor is now practically an unstoppable force. And it is beautiful in the way it demonstrates that power. The crushing ability, the wonderful fights, one after the other. It's always a pleasure to see Razor. The way it just destroyed opponents, the way it, tackled opponents differently as well. Firestorm, for example, it went after its sides, then its flipper. Tornado, it went straight for the wheels and just lifted up high in the air. With Gemini, it had to deal with 2 cluster bots at once, and it went for the wheels again. I love it. Razor is just such an entertaining and beautiful robot. It is everything you want in a robot, plus some. So you're going right into S tier. Very biasly putting you behind Pussycat because, I'm more of a Pussycat fan. Spoilers. Gotta just adjust the screen slightly because now we're on the final batch. Razzler is next. Razzler is basically Razor but as man-weight. Now, I wonder if Razzler was entered because of Close Shave having to withdraw for whatever reason, so they wanted another claw robot in. That's where Razzler came in. Razzler actually did appear in another live event. I don't remember what the live event was. It might have been a Children's Need event. But basically, there was a live event in which Razzler appeared in it. It fought against a miniature corkscrew, which was never seen on screen. It wasn't even in the Arty World Championship, and Anti-B. It's basically the toy Razor, and surprisingly, this toy Razor somehow didn't break apart when it was in its match, unlike my toy pullback Razors, which are all destroyed. They've just completely chipped, which is a real shame. Makes me sad. But Razzler, it's basically a miniature Razor. I love the design. Love it so much. It was pretty effective, all things considered. Surprisingly so. Technically, it's just a toy. It's just been modified. But, but I like it. RC Warrior's next. RC Warrior, I'm just going to get a drink. RC Warrior is a wedge-shaped robot with 2 tennis balls on the top and some spikes at the front. It's arguably a lot more designed, dare I say, than Beefcake, because Beefcake was literally just a bit of armor placed on a RC-controlled car. Whereas this one is an actual full-on designed robot with all its own gears and gizmos. It wasn't too bad. I mean, it was quite unreliable. It randomly broke down after it ran into I think it's the pit was slightly lowered and it accidentally hit the side of the lip of the pit and immobilized itself, which wasn't very good for its reliability, especially because it stopped dead straight away. It's a weird design, all things considered. I don't know what to say. It's I mean, it's not bad. It's just unreliable. I don't know. I'm going to put it in the low end of the B tier because it isn't a bad robot. It's just, it exists. Up next is Rhino. This is not the Rhino that we've seen before. This is a different Rhino. Rhino is a tank robot, and I actually really love the look of Rhino. Rhino is a really wonderfully designed robot. Unfortunately, it never won a fight. It either got screwed over by a judge's decision or its track fell off. And so poor old Rhino never won. Rhino, I just love the fact that it's just a miniature tank. Like, that is literally my only reason for loving this thing. Other than that, it's not very effective. But I love the fact that it's a miniature tank. You are going into the great design, but ineffective category. I'm going to put you there if the website actually bothers to load. Come on. You know you want to. There you go. Da. Okay, so next up is Scorpion. Scorpion didn't appear in Series 5. It will appear in Series 6 and 7 later on, though. It appeared in Series 4 as well. Scorpion in Series 4 had that really goofy Scorpion design. You know, hence the name Scorpion. Here, it's a lot more streamlined with just the Series 4 tail on the back, which is interesting. This is sort of like it's sort of a mixture of the Series 6 and Series 4 Scorpion, like mashed together in this unholy abomination. I mean, I say unholy abomination. It's a very good looking robot. Effectiveness wise, it was pretty decent. It was only in the House Robot Rebellion. Unfortunately, in the House Robot Rebellion, because there's no rules, the Scorpion just got taken out. It just got taken out straight away. Real shame, because I think Scorpion's a very good looking robot. Maybe if, it's a shame it didn't appear in Series 5, but, maybe if it was given better competition, it could have done well. It could have done something. Once again, I'm going to put this into B tier, and I'm going to put it slightly above quite a few of these. There you go, right in the middle of B tier. Shere Khan is next. Shere Khan is the robot which Kim Davies of Panic Attack actually got scared of. He didn't like the look of the drum. The drum looked fearsome. And yet, Shere Khan basically didn't do all that much. It's got that, tiger appearance just because it's based on, Shere Khan from the Jungle Book. And, maybe the weapon looks kind of nice, but other than that, I just don't care about Shere Khan. It's one of those forgettable robots from a very forgettable battle that existed at one point. So yeah, Shere Khan. I'm using sort of the similar logic towards it as I had with Mastiff. Design, okay, I quite like the painting. It's pretty. But other than that, no. Shockwave is next. Shockwave is I think it was done by the police, this one. This was part of the Armed Forces Special. I believe it got to... no, I think it got lost in the first round, actually. I was going to say, I think it got to the second round. No, it didn't. Shockwave, I quite like the design. Design-wise, it's great. I love the lightning bolts. I love the color scheme. I love the big spinner on the back. It just wasn't very effective. It was very unreliable. Real shame, because this design is really good. I think it looks gorgeous. So yeah, again, it's going into the great design but ineffective category. It's not as good as Rhino. Rhino was so much better looking. Could have put you there. Circle Lot is next. Circle Lot, the class act. They have a flipper this time. Gone is the over-the-top design. Now it has a flipper. I think it only appeared once in the Vengeance against Plunderbird, which was the big main event. It was, the comedy battle. The flipper, is far better than, say, whatever the hell Series 4 went with. And, better than the spike at the front in Series 3. Such a massive improvement. Really good looking robot. Overall, it's a very decent redesign. And, I think it's very good. It's going to go into B tier, though, because it just isn't as effective. And I'm going to put it below Plunderbird just because I think Plunderbird is better. S.M.I.D.S.Y is next. S.M.I.D.S.Y is unfortunate because S.M.I.D.S.Y in Extreme 1 was just unreliable. It isn't helped by the fact that S.M.I.D.S.Y is basically unfinished in Extreme 1. You'll notice it hasn't got the S.M.I.D.S.Y eyes or the any other like details. It's just kind of bare bone basic with scoop. It's sort of I think it was basically the Series 4 version. In other words, it didn't have the flywheel. I don't actually remember its appearances that much. I know it got defeated very easily by Pussycat. So, you know, this S.M.I.D.S.Y is not very good. It's not very reliable. It's not very pretty to look at. It got shredded very easily, in fact. It's almost like it had paper-thin armor. Real shame, because S.M.I.D.S.Y is a great robot, all things considered. But my God, was this not a good time for S.M.I.D.S.Y? I'm going to put this right at the top of D tier, because S.M.I.D.S.Y is a good robot. It is a very good robot, but in Extreme 1, it's just not very good. Spawn again is a good example of a very gorgeous looking robot. I love this design. I prefer this over the crappy, you know, black with yellow web design they had in Series 5. Why did they change it? This is such a gorgeous looking design. Very otherworldly almost. Reliability wise, it wasn't very reliable. Spawn again is one of my least favorite robots of all time, all things considered. Luckily, around this time period, it isn't that bad, but oh boy, when it comes to Series 6, this thing is going straight at the bottom. I'm just warning you right now. But here it's kind of unreliable, but it's not dreadful. It just misses the mark. Design wise, though, very good. Very good design. Like, really gorgeous design. Ineffective. Up next is Spirit of Nightmare. Spirit of Nightmare, I really like this design. It's a bit of a confused mess, all things considered. You know, it's got two bludgeoners on the side, these little axes on the back, the pink axes. It's got a flip on the front. It's not very fast, it's very slow, but it was able to hold up quite well before it got demolished by Disc-O-Inferno and did well in the Annihilator. It's not as good as the previous Nightmare. Nightmare was beautiful. It was gorgeously designed. This is a little bit way too much confused. Let's add everything. You know, so I gotta be fair where fair is. It's still going to go in B tier, though, because it is not a bad robot, and I am a sucker for its design. I do quite like its design, despite the fact that it's all over the place. So it's going to go right into B tier above RC Warrior. The RC whatever, as Jonathan Pierce called it. So Splinter is next. Splinter had a very interesting design change. Splinter obviously is a lot more tougher than the one that we saw previously. It doesn't have the round face anymore. Instead, it's got a square face with an axe and the claws. And yeah, I think this is such a brilliant design. I do kind of miss the round face design, I won't lie, but in terms of effectiveness, this is much, much better. This is a massive improvement, certainly. It was far more reliable. It was pretty reliable already, to be fair, but it was much better, in my opinion. The axe is really good. You know, design-wise, I might be a little bit critical, but I think it's still very good. I honestly think this is going to go into a very high... Actually, you know what? I'm going to put it into A tier. I'm actually going to put it into A tier because I think it is that good. That good. Right, up next is, if I can actually see it, Steel Avenger. So Steel Avenger, I've always liked Steel Avenger. I think Steel Avenger is a good robot. I think it's getting there in terms of like effectiveness. It did quite well, even if it lost against Behemoth and DS-Hall. You know what? I'm gonna just put not Behemoth. Steel Avenger goes into the. I'm gonna put it into the A tier. Actually, I think it is just that. I think it is good. You know, very good. There's a reason why it's runners up. Up next is Stinger. Stinger is no longer has that, like, I don't know what it is, that little like platform thing that it had in Series 3 and 4. It doesn't have that anymore. It's just a straightforward Axelbot, which makes you wonder how they knew which end they were facing. Makes it a lot more slippery. I love Stinger. Stinger is fantastic. It's still a very effective robot, even, up against competition like Tornado or, Behemoth. Stinger was really good. All things considered, Stinger is still very, very good. It's just, I do kind of wish it still had that little platform thing, because I was a little bit of a sucker for it, all things considered. But Stinger, Stinger's still great. Stinger's really good, still slippery, still annoying. And even up against tougher competition, Stinger still did really well. So I'm going to put it right in the S tier, because I think Stinger is that good. Oh my god, it just freaked out then. I really hate this website. Like, you don't understand how much I hate it. There you go. Yeah, why are you highlighting text, you stupid website? Anyways, enough fiddling around with that. Next up is Subversion. Subversion is a good example of a great design, but it's ineffective. It didn't really do too well. It was kind of... It's a really good-looking robot. It's like Rhino in a way, in the sense that the design is fantastic. It's based on a... like submarine, hence the name Subversion. Very good pun, by the way. But in terms of effectiveness, it wasn't very good. It can't really push effectively. Its weaponry was not all that good. It wasn't all that, powerful enough to fend off or damage our opponents. So, yeah, I'm going to put it right next to Rhino. Maybe above Rhino, because at least Subversion reappeared. Suicidal Tendencies is next. Suicidal Tendencies... I've said before, the Series 4 version is my favorite version of Suicidal Tendencies, but Series 5 version is very good. It's a very good looking robot. I think the claw, unlike the other robots which try to adopt the sort of like Razor-esque claw, the claw design, Suicidal Tendencies probably did it the best, because it knew how to like effectively grab onto robots and take them out. It knew how to like deal with machines. It knew how to control the battle. Whereas something like Ming, for example, just couldn't have the control capacity, nor did its tracks, wheels, were protected enough, so it was easily taken out. Its design negated its claw. Whereas with Suicide Tendencies, the design actually, assists with the claw design. So, I think, it works in tandem with one another. So, yeah, Suicide Tendencies, I think it's great. I love the bronze sort of look to it. I love the silver and bronze combination. The claw, the tracks. Very gorgeous robot. And the scoop as well. You're going right into S tier. And I'm going to put you there, in fact. Oh, dear. Oh, this coughing and spewing of phlegm and sore throats. It's not very nice. It's not very nice at all. All right, so who's next? It's Something. Something is has got a saw blade now. It's not got the axe. It will get the axe back though. I actually quite like the saw blade design. It gives it that more rusty, grungy, like almost like it's been made in like a Mad Max movie sort of look. I quite like that aspect of Something. Something is, Something is one of those robots which you can't hate. You just love it too much. It's too likable. I mean, it's not very effective, but it's got a very good design. I'll say that. It's not very effective, but its design is great. The Executioner is next. The Executioner was not very effective at all, and its design is it seems confused. You see, there's a picture of it in Series 4 qualifiers where it's crushing PC Plod, and it looks pretty effective there. And but then again, it had a bigger crusher. Here, it's got a smaller crusher. It looks way too small and ineffective to properly grab onto a robot. And that's about really it that I can say. The Executioner is not a very good robot. Its driving abilities was god-awful. It killed itself by driving into the pit. Its only appearance, its wild card against Dominator, and it killed itself. Dominator didn't even need to touch the Executioner. It's that bad. I'm going to put you into D tier because I don't think you're like dreadful enough to go into the lower category, but yeah. Next up is the Revolutionists. The Revolutionists, I think I've said this before, if I haven't, but you know those old candies, you know, the ones which are, you know, red and white? No, they've got that like swirly pattern on it. They're really delicious. Ooh. The ones that you can remember from your childhood. That is what the Revolutionist looks like to me. It looks tasty. It's weird. The Revolutionist looks tasty. I wonder if it is tasty. But I digress. I love the look of the Revolutionist. Very good robot. In Extreme 1, it only appeared once and it was not very effective. It was immediately caught by Razor. Razor crushed down on it, just crumpled it. Real shame, because I would love to have seen more of the Revolutionist, but I mean, it was up against very tough competition. It also managed to get flipped by Dietor after it was immobilized mind, which, yeah, I'm going to put you into B tier. You know, in hindsight, you are a very good robot, but at the moment, you're not. Or in this case, you're not. It's like with Dominator and Bigora, you know, in hindsight and in, you know, knowing outside of this particular series, it is a very good robot, but at the moment, no, it isn't. Thermidor is next. Thermidor has been redesigned somewhat. It's got a rounder end. It's no longer got that pointy, like more lobster-esque design. Its claws are more wedge-shaped. They're not as beefy and holy as before. And I think that works really effectively to its design. I think Thermidor is a fantastic robot. Now, it does sort of highlight some of its unreliability issues in some of the fights, which is why I'm hesitant to put it into S tier. Because as much as I want to put it into S tier, there are a lot of problems that Thermidor has. In the Annihilator, for example, it broke down like rather suddenly without much pressure, and it didn't really do much in the Annihilator. But then in the Mayhem, it flipped both Stinger and Behemoth out of the arena like within 5 seconds of one another. It's beautiful flips. And in the, you know, Flipper Frenzy, it was the longest surviving flipper. So what the hell happened in the Annihilator? I do not know. And unfortunately, this problem would consist for at least series 5 and 6. But in Extreme 1, aside from that and the tag team, it was pretty decent. So I'm going to do what I did with Behemoth in the sense that I'm going to look past the defeats and say it's still worthy of the S tier. I'm going to put you before Stinger, though, if this stupid website works. No, it isn't. It's actually gone. Oh, you piece of shit. I hate this website. Like I've told you already, this website is poorly optimized. It wants to load a million ads at once and it refuses to let you use ad block because, well, they need the revenue, to be fair. But as a result, it's a very shitty website. It's a very shitty website. I'm just going to ignore that. I'm going to wait until maybe the end now because clearly the website is frozen. So I'm going to just go through the other ones and say where I'm going to put them. So the Spider is up next, and I'm getting really sick and tired of this stupid thing. The Spider is up next, and basically the Spider is a very good looking robot. I'd say it's very effective, all things considered. Well, no, it isn't. It's not very effective. And in terms of design, its design is one of those designs which look like it has. It looks like it had a meaning to it. It had something that was, it had something that was going for it, and unfortunately, it didn't because. Well, how do I put it? Its design looks like it would have been able to tear apart other robots. Looks like it would have been able to do stuff, but unfortunately, the design is where, it kind of had a little bit of ineffectiveness. It was exposed. It was, sort of lanky. Spinners didn't look like they could spin up that very well, and it's like, I don't know. It's like, I kind of like the design. I like what they were trying to go for. In terms of effectiveness, though, the Spider is not very good. It was unreliable. It was a bit of a mess. It was a bit crap. It was one of those things where, like, you know, in hindsight, maybe it could have been better. In hindsight, it could have been better. But unfortunately, it wasn't. And that sucks, because I think the Spider is a good robot looking, had good intentions, but it just, it wasn't effective. I'm going to put it in the great design but ineffective category, just because I do think the Spider is not that bad. I do think the Spider had good intentions, so to speak. I think it had good intentions. And yeah, it's hard to talk about the Spider, because the Spider is one of those robots which I kind of feel bad for. It had good intentions. It appeared twice. It appeared in a Mayhem and a Wild Card. Lost both. I do quite like the Behemoth one, though. I thought that was quite a fun fight. But yeah, poor old Spider. Unfortunately, it's just, it just didn't make it. So I'm going to put that in the, great design, ineffective, but it's going to go, I'm going to put it like right at the bottom, just because I do have these mixed feelings. Next up is Tornado. Tornado, the powerhouse that is Tornado. Tornado in Series 4 was already a very good robot. But my God, is Tornado a masterclass here. The drum blade is probably one of the best additions they've ever made. This was the moment where Tornado really became a threat. Shredding Chaos 2 twice in two matches, separate matches. I just love the way it just tore chunks out of the front of Chaos 2. Really good robot. And it's understandable how this thing, went on to become champion later on, because it is just powerful. Very powerful, very violent, very good. Right up to the S tier, and I'm actually going to put it above Chaos 2. It's going to be in the top 3, because it is just that good. It is just that good. So up next is Typhoon 1, technically. Typhoon, the middleweight champion. Typhoon 2, we all know, is the robot that would end up winning, very controversially. So, Series 7. We know that Typhoon is very powerful. I quite like the fact that it looks like the RAF symbol if you were to look at it top view, top down. That's quite an effective touch. A very deadly robot. Very deadly robot. Spinning, tearing apart other opponents. Really, really good robot. I'm going to put it in S tier, because it is a very good robot. Very gorgeously designed. Certainly one of the best full-body spinners ever made. For obvious reasons. But yeah, Typhoon is, Typhoon just rocks, doesn't it? Up next is a Velociriptor. Velociriptor is... Velociriptor, I mean, I quite like the Team Mouse robots. I love Mega Mouse, I love Mighty Mouse, I love Ironside, I love Velociriptor. I love them all. Velociriptor, the one problem which I have with this robot, or this version of Velociriptor, is the saw blades at the front. I think that looks really ugly and really odd. Such a weird design choice to make. I don't get the logic behind it. I think it's very weird. I think it's very unusual. Yeah, I don't know. It's a very... I don't get the logic behind it. It seems very weird. So yeah, Velociriptor, I'm afraid... I'm actually going to put you into D tier. I'm going to put you right next to S.M.I.D.S.Y, though. Once everything stops freezing. I'm sure it's very boring on screen right now, just looking at a blank screen or looking at where things were before it all froze, but I am so sorry. Wheelie Big Cheese is next. Wheelie Big Cheese is a very, 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 very good-looking robot. I do quite like it. I do prefer, however, and this is personal preference, I do prefer the Series 4 version just because I liked the silvery like needles, silvery pins, as opposed to the black pins. I don't really like the black pins as much. The black pins, I mean, it's not bad, but it's just one of those things where it's like, what, like, you had something with the previous one. This one just isn't as good. I'm sorry. So yeah, like Wheelie Big Cheese, I still would say it's very good, very effective. Although you can still see where it's starting to falter a bit. I mean, it was unreliable in the Flipper Frenzy. It was easily thrown about by Chaos 2 in the All Stars. It got its wheels basically cut off by Hypno-Disc. So there are the flaws in it, but it's still a very good robot. I quite like the design. It's one of those designs which stick in your mind. It's one of those iconic Robots designs. You can't help but love it. So yeah, Wheelie Big Cheese, I'm going to put you into A tier. I'm actually going to put you below tier 2, ironically, because then below Manta, because at least Manta worked. Then Hypno-Disc. Sorry, I'm going to put you like below Hypno-Disc and above Gemini if I were to actually do it. Next up is Whirlpool 70. I have no idea what the hell this thing is trying to do, what it's trying to go for. A lot of people call this one of the worst robots ever made. I mean, it pretty much is. What the hell is this thing? Like, seriously, what is this? What are you looking at? What is that thing meant to be? Anyways, I'm going to put Whirlpool 70 right into F tier. It's going to go into F tier, but it's not going to be as low as Mammoth or Genesis, but it's going to be there. Wild Thing is next. Wild Thing has got the big flywheel now. Flywheel has been added to Wild Thing. Wild Thing's flywheel is a design choice which some people think is rather ineffective considering how good the original Wild Thing was and how kind of naff that flywheel was. It wasn't very effective, although if you watch closely it actually did quite a little bit of damage to Dominator. It was one of the reasons why Dominator lost. I can understand why people don't like it, because you compare it to Series 4 or even 3 Wild Thing. It was just so much more effective with just the wedge and the lifter. That's not to say it's bad. I love the design. I think the design is fantastic. Unfortunately, I just think that Wild Thing. I mean, I have mixed feelings. I think it's still an S tier. Don't get me wrong, but it's just, I can understand why people don't like the flywheel. I'm just going to say that right now. I think I understand why people don't like the flywheel. So yeah, Wild Thing, you're going into the S tier. I will put Wild Thing basically. Let's see. I'll put Wild Thing above. I'll put Wild Thing in the top 5. Actually, I'll put them in the top 5 because Wild Thing is just that good. It is that good. So yeah, good for Wild Thing, eh? So up next is the first of the Exterminators. This Exterminator is the Exterminator actually appeared in Series 4. It's the big blocky Exterminator, the one that appeared in Series 4. It doesn't have the scoop though. I don't remember it having the scoop. It just had the I'm stuttering over my own words. The axe. Oh my god, the big thing. The axe. The axe is actually the one that appears in the Series 5 version as well. It's the big rectangular, more powerful axe. The axe, I think, makes it worthwhile because other than that, Exterminator, I'd say is probably a B tier. This first version of Exterminator. The second version of Exterminator, the one that appears in Series 5, oh boy, that second version is so much sleeker. It's basically the Series 4 version if the only the bottom bit was kept on and the top bit was sliced off and slightly tilted. So it's a bit more, wedgy in design. I think it looks so much better, so much more appealing. But it's a case of, it's a case of your preference, really. I mean, if you prefer the other Exterminator, you prefer this one, I do not blame you. Still, really good robot. Overall, I'd say, Exterminator is just really good looking. I won't put it above, the A tier though, because it was somewhat unreliable and it did have its issues, and it's not as good as, say, a later version, which we'll see later on. But for the time being, it's very good. Next up is Yeborobo, the second to last robot. Yeborobo is a thing that exists. I don't know what to say about Yeborobo. It's a South African robot, and it's a robot that I don't care for. I'm sorry. It's a robot which... It's just a very ugly looking robot. It's very ugly looking. It's got a conveyor belt. It's got googly eyes. It's got an axe. It didn't work. It is going into F tier. It is going into F tier right next to Whirlpool 70. And finally, the very final one, which is Zap. Zap is a robot which... it's a robot which I think... It's a robot which I think is decently designed. I'll say that. I'll be nice. I'll say it's decently designed. But my God, it didn't seem like it did anything. It's very forgettable. It's one of those robots which I just can't remember what it did other than get killed by Typhoon. Yeah, kind of a disappointing end to the big tier list. Mind you, we've had several problems throughout this entire video. This is such an embarrassing video. I'm so sorry for you, all of you. But mind you, most of you skipped to the end anyway to see the end result. And what do I have to say about Series 1 of Extreme Robot Wars? Well, there's quite a few S-tier robots. They're mostly all the all-stars because they are just so good. The A-tier also has a few all-stars here and there, but a lot of them in the A-tier list is because they are, they are losing their effectiveness, and so they haven't, they can't be in S-tier. B-tier is a lot of robots which have potential, maybe do have potential, but in Extreme 1 they just couldn't show off that potential. The great design, there's a lot of great designs, as per usual. That usually is the case. A lot of great designs which just weren't very effective. But D tier and F tier are surprisingly quite filled up. F tier in particular, there's a lot of F tier robots which are just absolute garbage. D tier has quite a few robots which should be higher up, like S.M.I.D.S.Y or Free Sticks to Heaven, but no, they're down here. Really, I think this is the first possible time I can safely say that the first time that we're going to start seeing a lot more robots in the F tier category, because Series 4, it was almost perfection. There was almost no bad robots. However, Series 5 onwards is not very good when it comes to having a lot of bad robots. Series 5 may have quite a lot of bad robots in it. I'm warning you right now, Series 5 may have some of the largest amount. So so I think overall Series 1 of Extreme 1 has a very good range of robots. At the end of the day, a lot of these robots are based on how well they were in certain competitions as opposed to others. And then you have other ones which are just, really bad in some competitions but really good on others, or good in some competitions but bad. You know what I'm trying to say. Overall, I still love the series. I think the series is great. I think it has a very great, diverse range of robots. And I think that's really what goes to its advantage. So, do you agree? Do you disagree with the lists? That is up to you. These lists are all online. You can do it yourself. Hopefully you don't have as much trouble as I did. I do apologize for how bad this one has gone, but alas, it is what it is. And anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. It's been over 2 hours long, and I'll see you next time.